Sabaha everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to unbox the Oppo Find X. This is 2018's most unique device in my opinion because of the fact of the aesthetics of what we get with the device. We have an almost bezel-less display, but not only that, both the front and the back facing cameras are hidden unless you need them, and then they pop up. You don't get me? Well, let's get into it. I'm going to share with you guys what I like and what I didn't like after having this device for about 24 hours. So the box is pretty simple. It just basically says Oppo Find X. Now I did purchase this one used, so just keep a heads up. This is not a 100% brand new unit, although it was definitely well taken care of. Pulling the tab on the side here with the orange, you pulled the actual device, and then of course you're greeted directly with the phone. There's not much else going on here. The phone itself is a 6.4-inch 1080p OLED display. Now, what we get here obviously is going to be a really good color representation, but not only that, you've probably already seen it. There's some curvature on the sides. Let's go ahead and pop the phone out. The color that I got is basically the burgundy color that kind of shimmers all around. So you got that kind of a darker black tone in the middle, and it goes into burgundy. And we have a symmetrical, basically, bending of the glass, basically. So the curvature goes from the front to the back, and then of course even the band in the middle is colored. On the right side, we have just a single power button, one of the antenna bands. On the top, we have just basically one of the microphones and what seems to be an IR blaster. We'll have to check that out. On the left side, I have a volume rocker and another antenna band. There is no activation button or anything simple there. On the bottom, we have a single firing speaker, one of the microphones, a USB-C charge and data connection, and a dual SIM slot that enables us to have 2 SIM cards but no SD card. Now, luckily, I was able to pick up the one that has 256 gigs of internal storage, so expandable storage is not going to be an issue on this for me. But other than that, there is a variant that is 128 gigs. Still no expandable storage. On the back, as you see, there's no cameras. I was going to say on the front you don't see any cameras, but I'm going to shut it off. But we also don't have wireless charging. We do have VOOC charging here, which should be able to give us about 50% in 30 minutes using the included adapter. Let's go ahead and open it up in the box. Now this is a UK adapter. Obviously, I'll have to use an adapter on top of the power brick. They also include the USB-C, the 3.5mm headphone jack adapter, since we don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack here. And of course, last but not least, they include USB-C buds, and as well as a USB-C to USB-A cable to use with the power brick. So pretty much you're covered for what you need out of the box to be able to enjoy music. These are kind of like AirPods style pods, so if you want better, I would say sound isolation, definitely use a different pair with the little option that you have here. So we've kind of already talked about the display, and let's start talking about the actual little slit opening here that we have. This pretty much is the earpiece. If I press the button here and I slide up, it's going to show you basically that there's a little speaker that shows up at the top. Now, you notice right there, when I went through the entire thing, I didn't say anything about a fingerprint sensor. There is no fingerprint sensor, not in the display, not hidden behind it. The unlock mechanism right now is pretty much focused on either using a PIN, a passcode, or using the front-facing camera. And it is ridiculously fast. And the reason I say that is when you think about a mechanism that enables you to basically hide and basically unhide cameras, you're considering saying there's going to be a delay. How fast can you unlock a phone? By the time I'm swiping up, it scans, comes back, and it goes away. And I'm actually in my device and I'm using it the way I want to. Now, the cameras in the back are pretty much the same boat. So let's go ahead and open up the camera. You'll notice there's 2 cameras in the back. There's a 16 and a 20 megapixel sensor. We're able to go all the way to 4K at 30 frames per second as far as highest quality video that you can get. And of course, we have a dual tone LED flash. Now, on the front, we have a higher megapixel sensor, a 25 megapixel sensor that does actually really well. And I was actually kind of surprised on the quality of the images. It's actually pretty good, pretty sharp. We do have HDR on both the front and the back. And what you have the ability to, of course, is turning on. So let's go into the different modes. We have time-lapse, slow-mo, video. You can basically go 4K 720p, 1080p. Unfortunately, no 4K 60, even though we've seen other devices with the Snapdragon 845 do it. This one's only at 30. And if I switch over to the front-facing camera, we are limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second and 720p. The good thing is most of the modes that you see here on the bottom work on both on the front and on the back. So slow-mo will work on the front. Let's go ahead and actually go back. Most of them, I guess not slow-mo. Video will work on the front, photo, portrait, and of course we have sticker. That just gives you a little fun thing to do here. You can play with dragons and stuff like that. And then we also have panorama to be able to do a wide selfie, which is really nice. Now, there's no settings other than that in here, but when we go into the photo section, we have the ability of basically setting between the different cameras here, and then go either 4:3, 1:1, or full screen image. So you can go full benefit of the display. When you go under video, you have the ability of going basically into just, you know, the 1080p functionality and then changing the options in there. And then once you close the camera, let's say you go home, the camera mechanism goes away. Very simple. You do not need to pop up the camera. You don't need to have it out there. If you're not using the cameras at all, basically this is how the phone will look. It looks and it works very well. Now, you probably already noticed that I'm not using the ColorOS launcher. There was an update that got pushed that allows us to change the launcher. I think initially when this device was put out, the launcher was not something that you could change. So I'm using Nova. This is something that I've always used on many of my devices, so you notice right there. I did not install my Prime membership on this one. I'm still in the process of setting this up. But here, when you go into the options under the default apps, you're able to basically change the home screen. Now, they do give you a warning. They said you should not be changing it, but you are able to basically switch over, or you can basically stick to it, and it says still changing. They give you the warning, but you're allowed to do it. So if I go in here and I go home, swipe back, we're back into the ColorOS system. Now, by default, this does not have an app tray. It does have somewhat of an assistant here on the left side, so you can enable it, and it tries to learn some of your habits. Of course, what we have here essentially is the settings on the right, all of the rest of the applications that we have installed. Pretty much you could just log in with your Oppo ID, you have airplane mode, SIM cellular connections, you can configure your dual SIM connection, Wi-Fi connectivity, Bluetooth, and then they keep everything else just hidden under this expanded menu. There is no NFC support, but we have personal hotspot, of course, Wi-Fi tethering, Bluetooth tethering, Wi-Fi direct, multi-screen interaction, and that gives us the ability of basically sharing our screen over network to a supported DLNA type of a display, let's say a monitor. So definitely really cool. And of course, enabling DLNA here if you'd like to share. Notification bar and status, you can turn on the battery, notification bar, turn screen on notification, of course, show banner notification in full gesture, and then of course you can manage your notification. In the process of all of this, you notice I've been using gestures, meaning I've been actually swiping on this device. I'm not using the navigation bar. There is an option in there, and we'll get to that. Now, display and brightness, you have the ability to go in and changing the color at temperature. You can either go default, cooler, or warmer. I've kept it in default. Portrait orientation lock, of course, if you don't want it to be able to switch. Auto screen off if you want to. Here, screen lock, curved panoramic lighting effect. This is basically how they're going to set it up for when you get notifications. It'll start kind of illuminating around the light, right on the display. Font size, app display, you know, night shield is where it takes out some of the blue tones out of your color, and it gives you the ability of just having an easier way to go to sleep. Sound or vibration, pretty standard. You can customize your information. This does not support stereo speakers, so unfortunately we have a bottom firing speaker, and the top one does not complement that. And you can go in there and customize the different options, and of course headphones monitor, and then real sound technology to be able to basically configure the sound to the way you want it. This will work obviously when you have the headphones connected. Quiet time is pretty much what it explains. The ability of controlling notifications as well as what comes through at what part of the day. Very simple and very easy. Face and passcode, this is where you'd be able to set up your information. So lock screen passcode, privacy, and then face. I did enroll my face already, and that's obviously why I was able to basically just swipe it up, and it's doing it from an actual good distance, so it's pretty good and it's very accurate. Smart, convenient, these are the gesture options. So here, gesture and motions, I'm able to go in there, I can turn them on. Curved screen gestures, these are very cool. So if I do, let's see if I can do this correctly. I'm actually able to swipe twice and then use this, and the ability to basically just launch into the recent app. And if I do this, I can get it right. Yep, I can launch a split screen, which really is very functional. So you can QC browser, go in, close it, and then we'll go back into the settings. So really cool. Love these options here. They're very unique, and they definitely do use the main benefit. And you did notice here we do have a side launcher that's built in, and I've added some applications in there. Smart slider, gesture motion, of course, smart driving, smart assistant, and of course here is the option that I was able to turn on the assistant. So by pressing by half a second, I'm able to launch the assistant and then be able to interact with her. Last but not least, of course, we have the ability of going in and, the smart slider, the assistive ball, and that's just basically turning on a side gesture option. And then, of course, you can still use the normal gestures. Security, pretty much same thing. We have app lock, kit space, and private space that are supported in here. And of course, the ability to adding, floating windows and so on. You can actually customize them in there. We'll go back here. You can turn them on for whichever one you'd like. Now the battery on this device is a 3730 milliamp battery that's supposed to go up to 50% in approximately 30 minutes. So we could say roughly about an hour you'll be able to charge it. There is a variant of the Find X that's called the Lamborghini edition that can go from 0 to 100% in 35 minutes, and that's using Super VOOC, not regular VOOC charging, which is what we have here. Region to region, you can customize that, and then of course additional settings, you can go into the search, SIM toolkit. OTG option is in, but it's disabled by default, so if you want to turn on OTG, turn it on. Download manager, and of course storage. I have the 256 gig variant of this device. There is another one that has 128, so depending on which one you have, you're definitely not going to need to add additional storage. It would have been nice to have that, but it's definitely nice to have the higher end version of this. Software update is where we check our software. Of course, about phone, we can go in there and check the device information. As I mentioned to you guys, we are running Android Oreo, so this is basically just running ColorOS 5.1 over Android Oreo. And here we have just the account management option under cloud, account and sync, and of course Google service, Google type accounts. App management, pretty simple. You can go in there and customize. The default app is in there. That's where I was able to change my launcher. Speaking of which, we can go in there now, and then we'll go under home screen, and I'm going to change it to Nova. Yes, change home screen, and then I'm just going to go back into the settings tab, and we'll go back in here. You're able to customize the rest of the options as well. We have additional options. Go back one more time. Clone apps, that's basically where you want to run two versions of the same app. Game space is essentially a little more focused in gaming. And of course, app split screen, you can go in there and customize some of the options as far as how you want to be able to do it. You can actually initiate it by just doing the 3 fingers up, and it just works very nicely. Like I said, there's the option that you can, so let's go ahead and open up the browser, and then I'll just put it away, that you can actually initiate it by just swiping up and down on the fingers there. Last but not least, system apps, you can get in there, pretty simple. Overall, ColorOS is not necessarily it's not the cup of tea for everybody, and I'm going to mention one thing to you guys. The ability of changing the launcher is definitely very nice. It wasn't there at the beginning, so I've seen some reviews where they've referenced it, but overall, it's very nice. Now, here are some of the things I'm a little bit concerned about the device. So let's go ahead and open up the camera. This is going to really drive you guys crazy. So all I'm doing here is tapping here. There's some kind of an issue here, and it's the same thing in the back. And that's pretty much just around that little mechanism that's sitting here around the camera. Of course, when I close it, it goes away. It's still there. That, for me, was a big issue because mostly what I've done is I was trying to go here and I'm trying to bring down the little notification shade, and that's when I noticed I started tapping it. So I'm not sure if that means I have a bad unit. I'm also not sure if this is basically how it's intended to be, because we do have a moving part. So they don't have it very tight. They need to give it some room for it to be able to go up and down. As far as durability, I'll give you guys a heads up, of course, after some time of usage. Here's a quick front-facing sample of the 25 megapixel sensor at 1080p. Of course, just give you guys a video and audio sample of what you can expect using this camera. It does max out only at 1080p, even though we have a higher megapixel count on the front camera than we have in the back one. Okay, I went ahead and switched over to the back-facing sensors. We have a 16 and a 20 megapixel sensor, both capable of basically helping us either get really good depth of field for the bokeh effect, but also capable of giving us 4K at 30 frames per second. Again, quick sample of the back-facing sensor, and we cover the front. So let's go ahead and do a quick audio test. So for a quick sound sample, we're going to be playing Alex Crindo, the Jumbo NCS release, just to kind of get a feel of how that bottom firing speaker can get, especially at high volumes. Overall impressions after 24 hours. Now obviously the cameras on this are very nice. The sound is pretty good. The quality of calls, everything looks pretty good. I didn't get a chance to really test it out fully, but it does have pretty much really good specs. I mean, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of internal storage, and of course we have the Snapdragon 845. We're talking flagship of top flagships of 2018, so there's no questions this device can handle its own. Now, it is still running Android Oreo, no word of Android Pie at this point, and it is running a heavily skinned version of Android Oreo, so the ability to install Nova Prime for me was definitely a very comfortable thing to do, because I initially heard that we could not install a secondary launcher. It does work in the US on AT&T and T-Mobile. I'm getting 4G, I'm not getting LTE, of course, so the maximum download speed I was still able to get yesterday was about 8 or 9 megabits down. Not bad, but it's not LTE. So That little mechanism flimsiness that I showed you guys at the beginning is a little bit of a concern for me, so I'm going to see how that kind of pans out. Let me know in the comments below, what would you like to know about the Oppo Find X. I wasn't able to get the Lamborghini edition. Obviously I had to pick it up, so I paid for this one. So keep in mind, I'm going to have it for a little bit amount of time here, and of course once I'm done with it, I'll hopefully be able to sell it out. So keep an eye. If you're looking for one, you may be able to pick that up from my Swappa listing. The link will be in the description below. Like and subscribe as usual. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and see you guys in the next video.